Most people live their lives blind, reacting, guessing, letting emotions dictate their fate. Yet power, success, and freedom belong only to those who think clearly and act wisely. Today, I will show you how to sharpen your mind, see through illusions, and make decisions that others fear to make. This is not about luck. It's about strategy, control, and mastery of yourself. Machiavelli's way. The first and most fundamental step toward thinking clearly and making smarter decisions is mastering your own mind. Many people mistake knowledge for wisdom, believing that reading books, hearing advice, or learning strategies is enough to achieve control over life. Machiavelli knew better. The mind is the battlefield on which all power is won or lost, and if you cannot command your own thoughts, you will never command the world around you. To master your mind is to recognize that your thoughts, emotions, and impulses are not mere reactions to the outside world, but instruments that must be sharpened, disciplined, and directed with precision. Every day, countless distractions, fears, desires, and illusions assault the mind, and most people surrender to them, allowing emotion to dictate choices, leaving reason weakened. To think clearly, you must first distinguish between what is essential and what is trivial, between truth and perception, and between calculated risk and reckless action. Self-mastery begins with observation. You must watch your thoughts as a general observes his army, understanding where your weaknesses lie, identifying the impulses that can betray you, and noting the patterns that shape your decisions. Anger, envy, pride, and desire are natural forces, but left unchecked, they cloud judgment, distort reality, and lead to disaster. Machiavelli's leaders were never slaves to impulse. They understood that the mind is a tool to wield, not a servant to satisfy whims. By observing your mental habits, you can start to see where decisions fail before they are even made, where hesitation, fear, or overconfidence threatens your advantage. This requires ruthless honesty with yourself. Many delude themselves into believing they are rational, but true mastery demands confronting your weaknesses without flinching, accepting that your mind can deceive you as easily as it can serve you. Discipline is the next essential. Mastering the mind is not a matter of occasional insight or fleeting focus. It is daily training. This involves setting boundaries for thought, refusing to dwell on fantasies that serve no purpose, and avoiding the temptations of procrastination, distraction, or emotional indulgence. Machiavelli understood that clarity is born from order. A cluttered mind produces muddled actions. To gain mental discipline, one must practice controlling attention, selecting what to think about, and recognizing the thoughts that are productive versus those that are destructive. Meditation, reflection, journaling, or deliberate contemplation of choices and consequences are tools that can strengthen this control. Each day becomes a rehearsal in strategy, a practice in calculating risks and understanding the forces that shape human behavior. Finally, mastering the mind requires the cultivation of detachment. To think clearly, you must rise above immediate emotions and personal biases. Every thought must be tested against reason and observation. Desire for praise, fear of failure, or attachment to comfort can warp judgment. The disciplined mind must recognize these forces and act independently of them. Machiavelli's rulers were often ruthless because they understood that mercy or indulgence that served the heart but not the mind would weaken their position. In life, the average person follows instincts and feelings. The master observes, controls, and directs them toward strategic ends. A mind under command becomes like a sharp blade, precise, swift, and effective. Each decision is made from a place of strength, not weakness, and each thought is a tool that can be deployed to shape reality rather than be shaped by it. This mastery is not a natural gift, but a cultivated power. It demands patience, self-awareness, and relentless practice. Those who fail to govern themselves are forever at the mercy of circumstance, emotion, and the manipulations of others. The mind is the first kingdom you must conquer because all external power, influence, and success originate from within. Only by training your mind, disciplining your thoughts, and controlling impulses can clarity emerge, allowing you to see the world as it is, rather than as you fear, desire, or imagine it to be. Every strategy, every plan, Every maneuver begins with this command over yourself. For without it, every decision becomes a gamble, and every opportunity slips through your fingers. To think clearly and make smarter decisions, one must learn to separate emotion from strategy, for the human mind is easily deceived by the illusions of passion. Most people believe that their feelings are guides to truth, that anger, fear, or desire indicate the proper course of action. Machiavelli understood that such thinking is dangerous. Emotions are unpredictable, fleeting, and often self-serving, while strategy requires calm, calculated assessment of reality. Leaders who surrender to emotion act impulsively, overreact to threats, and lose sight of long-term objectives. To separate emotion from strategy is to recognize that feelings are not commands to obey, but signals to interpret, tools to understand human behavior, not forces that dictate action. When a person allows anger to guide decisions, they overestimate enemies, misjudge opportunities, and create conflicts where none were necessary. When fear dominates, hesitation paralyzes action, and potential gains vanish before they are seized. Desire can blind the mind, causing attachment to outcomes or people that compromise judgment. The strategic mind, in contrast, observes emotion, acknowledges its presence but refuses to let it shape decisions, using it only to inform a realistic understanding of the world. Detachment is the foundation of this principle. To act strategically, one must rise above immediate emotional reactions. Machiavelli's rulers were often described as cold or calculating. Yet this was not cruelty for its own sake, but a conscious refusal to let sentiment cloud judgment. Every action must be measured against consequences, every choice weighed for its effect on power and position. This does not mean one abandons morality entirely, but morality must not interfere with clear perception and effective action. Emotional impulses often serve ego or self-interest in a shallow, short-sighted way. Strategy demands that one place long-term objectives above momentary comfort. To separate emotion from strategy, the mind must constantly question its motivations. Is this decision born of anger, pride, fear, or desire, or does it serve a larger purpose? Emotional self-awareness becomes the lens through which every move is evaluated. Observation of others is equally crucial. Emotions are not only internal forces but also external weapons and vulnerabilities. Understanding how anger, envy, fear, or desire motivate others allows a strategist to predict behavior and manipulate outcomes without revealing weakness. Machiavelli knew that power is maintained not only through force but through perception. A leader who displays unchecked emotion signals vulnerability, inviting attack or exploitation. Conversely, a calm, measured approach conceals true intentions and fosters respect, fear, or loyalty as needed. Emotional detachment is therefore both a defensive and offensive tool. It ensures that actions are guided by rational calculation rather than reactive impulse, allowing the strategist to remain several steps ahead in every engagement. Training oneself to separate emotion from strategy requires constant practice and discipline. It demands the ability to pause before responding, to examine instinctive reactions and assess whether they advance or hinder objectives. Meditation, reflection, and deliberate analysis of past decisions strengthen this skill, allowing one to recognize patterns of emotional influence and to neutralize them. A mind dominated by sentiment cannot see reality clearly. It confuses preference with necessity, attachment with opportunity, and fear with danger. Only through repeated observation and restraint can the mind learn to employ emotion as intelligence rather than as a master. This separation also involves calculated empathy. Understanding emotions does not mean succumbing to them. It means using knowledge of feelings, both one's own and others, to craft strategies that maximize advantage. Anger, desire, and fear are predictable forces when studied objectively. They reveal weaknesses, motives, and potential leverage points. The strategist harnesses this information without succumbing to its sway, allowing emotional knowledge to inform rational action. A ruler or decision-maker who conflates emotion with strategy loses not only clarity, but control, leaving outcomes dependent on chance rather than design. The disciplined mind recognizes that emotion is neither friend nor enemy. It is data. The strategic mind analyzes it, anticipates its effects, and acts in accordance with reason. In every decision, this separation transforms chaos into order, uncertainty into calculated risk, and vulnerability into opportunity. To think clearly and make smarter decisions, one must cultivate the ability to anticipate every outcome, for the world is a web of consequences, each action rippling far beyond its origin. Machiavelli observed that those who fail to foresee the results of their choices are inevitably swept aside by circumstance, while those who anticipate repercussions can manipulate events to their advantage. Every decision carries multiple potential outcomes, both visible and hidden, and the wise strategist understands that uncertainty is not an excuse for inaction, but an opportunity for preparation. The mind that can visualize possible scenarios gains control over events before they occur, transforming chance into strategy and chaos into leverage. Anticipation requires the ability to think several moves ahead, to weigh probabilities, and to consider both the immediate and long-term effects of every choice. The first step in anticipating outcomes is observation. One must study the environment, the people involved, and the history of similar situations. Machiavelli emphasized that human nature is consistent in its weaknesses and predictable in its desires. By observing patterns of behavior, one can foresee likely reactions and prepare accordingly. A leader who fails to anticipate how others will respond to a command or proposal risks miscalculation, betrayal, or resistance. Even seemingly small actions can provoke large consequences if the underlying motives of others are misunderstood. Understanding intentions, fears, and ambitions allows the strategist to predict moves and counter-moves, ensuring that decisions are informed not by hope or optimism but by calculated insight. Critical thinking is essential in this process. Anticipation demands that one evaluates all possibilities, not just the desired or convenient outcomes. Machiavelli warned against wishful thinking, for it blinds the mind to threats and undermines foresight. Each decision must be assessed against best case, worst case, and probable scenarios. The strategist imagines the chain of events that will follow, identifying potential pitfalls and opportunities alike. This does not require obsession over impossibilities, but disciplined, realistic consideration of what is likely to happen. By doing so, one positions themselves to act decisively, to seize advantage where others hesitate, and to mitigate danger before it becomes unavoidable. Preparation follows anticipation. Seeing every possible outcome is useless without readiness to respond. Machiavelli's leaders stockpiled resources, forged alliances, and crafted contingency plans not because they doubted themselves, but because they understood the unpredictable nature of human affairs. The disciplined mind creates multiple strategies for every decision, ensuring flexibility when circumstances shift. Anticipation is not passive, it is active engagement with reality. It allows the decision-maker to act swiftly, confidently, and with authority, exploiting opportunities that the unprepared cannot even perceive. Every choice becomes a controlled experiment, with awareness of both reward and risk, rather than a blind gamble. Emotional detachment amplifies the power of anticipation. A mind clouded by desire, fear, or attachment cannot accurately foresee outcomes, for it interprets events through bias rather than observation. Machiavelli advocated for the ruler who sees the world as it is, not as they wish it to be. By separating emotion from strategy, one can assess consequences with clarity and impartiality, recognizing threats before they manifest and advantages before they are seized. This disciplined perspective transforms uncertainty into actionable intelligence, converting potential chaos into deliberate, controlled action. Finally, anticipating every outcome requires continuous reassessment. Circumstances change, people act unpredictably, and new information constantly emerges. The strategist does not anticipate once and remain fixed. They constantly revise their understanding, updating expectations and adjusting strategies accordingly. This dynamic approach ensures that decisions remain aligned with reality and that opportunities are captured while threats are neutralized. Those who anticipate effectively are not fortune-tellers, but careful observers and planners who shape events rather than surrender to them. Every move is made with the awareness that every action, every word, every choice carries consequences, and only by foreseeing these consequences can one navigate the world with clarity, precision, and power. To think clearly and make smarter decisions, One must develop the habit of questioning everyone and trusting sparingly, for the world is filled with hidden motives, concealed agendas, and subtle manipulations. Machiavelli understood that humans are guided by self-interest, often masking their true intentions behind appearances of loyalty, friendship, or goodwill. To act without scrutiny is to surrender control to forces that are neither visible nor predictable. The strategic mind approaches every interaction as a puzzle, every statement as a potential misdirection, and every alliance as contingent rather than guaranteed. Questioning is not born of paranoia but of prudence. It is the recognition that knowledge is power, and understanding the motives of others allows one to navigate relationships with clarity and precision. The first principle in this practice is careful observation. One must pay attention not only to what people say, but also to what they do, to their patterns, inconsistencies, and reactions under pressure. Words can deceive, but actions rarely lie. Machiavelli emphasized that rulers and leaders are betrayed not by open enemies, but by those who were trusted blindly. By watching behavior, noting inconsistencies, and interpreting subtle signals, the strategist gains insight into hidden motives, revealing both threats and opportunities. A single misstep in trusting the wrong individual can unravel years of planning, while careful assessment ensures that alliances are built on calculated advantage rather than illusion. Critical interrogation is essential. Questioning should be deliberate and methodical, extending to every layer of interaction. One must ask not only what someone wants, but why they want it, how it serves them, and what they may gain or lose from their actions. Machiavelli's rulers were masters of this scrutiny, understanding that human nature is largely predictable if one studies ambition, fear, greed, and desire. By analyzing motives and testing loyalty, the strategist identifies who can be relied upon and who is likely to act in self-interest at the expense of others. Every promise is weighed, every commitment assessed against reality, and no assumption is allowed to pass unexamined. Trust, once earned, must be measured carefully. Machiavelli warned that trust is a tool, not a guarantee. It can be granted strategically, but never indiscriminately, for even the closest allies are capable of betrayal if circumstances favor it. The wise decision-maker builds redundancy into relationships, maintains awareness of potential threats, and keeps contingency plans ready. Trust sparingly does not mean alienating others or creating enemies, but rather managing relationships with the understanding that loyalty is conditional and human behavior is fluid. By controlling the degree of trust, one maintains authority, preserves options, and reduces vulnerability to deception. This practice extends to oneself as well. Questioning is not limited to the external world. The strategist must also interrogate personal assumptions, biases, and judgments. Overconfidence or naive belief in one's perceptions can blind the mind to threats and mislead decision-making. By consistently examining motivations, anticipating manipulation, and challenging conventional wisdom, one strengthens judgment and reduces the risk of being outmaneuvered. Machiavelli's leaders cultivated self-awareness alongside external scrutiny, recognizing that mastery over one's own understanding is inseparable from mastery over others. Finally, questioning everyone and trusting sparingly allows the strategist to exploit opportunities while avoiding disaster. Knowledge of hidden intentions enables one to anticipate betrayals, negotiate from strength, and act decisively when others falter. It fosters resilience, clarity, and precision, transforming complex social dynamics into manageable calculations. Relationships become instruments of strategy rather than blind emotional attachments, and every interaction is an opportunity to observe, learn, and maneuver. By maintaining vigilance, scrutinizing motives, and granting trust cautiously, the mind gains the freedom to act decisively, the clarity to choose allies wisely, and the power to shape outcomes according to both ambition and reason. To think clearly and make smarter decisions, one must learn to simplify complexity, for the world is filled with distractions, contradictions, and endless details that can obscure judgment and paralyze action. Machiavelli understood that most people are overwhelmed by the apparent intricacy of situations, mistaking complexity for importance and allowing confusion to dictate their choices. The strategic mind, however, recognizes that clarity is born not from accumulating more information, but from distilling reality to its essential elements. Complexity, when untamed, becomes a trap. It clouds perception, fuels indecision, and allows less disciplined minds to dominate. By simplifying, one strips away the superfluous, identifies the core variables, and focuses on what truly drives outcomes, turning chaos into actionable intelligence. The first step in simplifying complexity is prioritization. Not all information holds equal weight, and not every factor merits attention. Machiavelli's rulers observed that the essence of power lies in understanding which elements influence success and which are distractions. In any decision, there are fundamental forces at play: human motives, resource availability, timing, and consequences. Everything beyond these core drivers can be recognized but not allowed to dominate thought. By filtering out irrelevant details, the strategist channels mental energy into understanding the factors that actually determine results. This prioritization allows for decisive, informed action rather than endless deliberation or paralysis by analysis. Clarity emerges through categorization and structure. When faced with complex problems, the mind must organize information into logical frameworks. Machiavelli's approach was analytical. He dissected situations into smaller, manageable components, each understood individually and then integrated into a larger strategy. This method allows the strategist to comprehend cause and effect, anticipate interactions, and develop plans that account for multiple variables without being overwhelmed. Simplifying complexity is not oversimplification. It is the act of creating a model of reality that is both manageable and accurate, capturing the essence without drowning in minutiae. Another critical aspect is eliminating emotional clutter. Complexity is often amplified by fear, desire, or pride, which distort perception and exaggerate challenges. Machiavelli knew that rulers who allowed sentiment to obscure judgment made poor decisions, mistaking illusion for reality. A disciplined mind separates emotional noise from factual assessment, focusing on objective truth rather than subjective anxiety. By doing so, the strategist sees patterns where others see chaos, identifies threats before they become crises, and recognizes opportunities that were previously hidden in the fog of overcomplication. Decision-making is improved through simplification because it reduces uncertainty. Every unnecessary detail introduces ambiguity and slows the response to critical situations. Machiavelli's leaders acted with speed and precision because they had distilled information to what mattered most. They understood that action delayed by confusion or overthinking is often equivalent to inaction, which allows competitors or adversaries to seize advantage. A mind trained to simplify recognizes which elements are decisive, which risks are acceptable, and where leverage lies, enabling quick, confident, and strategic responses. Simplifying complexity also enhances communication and influence. A clear plan or argument is far more persuasive than one buried in convoluted reasoning. Machiavelli emphasized that a leader's strength depends not only on their own understanding, but also on the ability to convey clarity to allies, subordinates, and adversaries. When complex strategies are reduced to their essential principles, they become executable, enforceable, and adaptable. Others can follow them, support them, or be persuaded by them, multiplying the strategist's effectiveness. Finally, simplification is a tool for mastery. It allows the strategist to see the hidden structure beneath apparent disorder, to act decisively, and to remain unshaken by confusion that ensnares others. By identifying the essential forces, stripping away noise, and focusing on what truly matters, one transforms overwhelming situations into manageable problems. The mind gains agility, the ability to predict outcomes, and the confidence to act decisively. Complexity is no longer a barrier, but a canvas upon which strategy can be painted with clarity and precision. To think clearly and make smarter decisions, one must understand that knowledge without action is worthless, and the ultimate measure of strategy lies in the ability to act decisively once informed. Machiavelli observed that hesitation, doubt, and delay are the enemies of power, allowing opportunities to vanish and rivals to seize advantage. A mind may be sharp, informed, and perceptive, but if it fails to translate insight into action, it remains inert, like a weapon never drawn. The strategic thinker recognizes that clarity and preparation are only part of the battle. The final step is execution. Decisive action turns theory into reality, potential into achievement, and understanding into influence. Indecision is a silent surrender, signaling weakness and inviting challenge, while swift, informed action demonstrates authority and mastery over circumstance. The first element of acting decisively is confidence grounded in knowledge. Machiavelli's leaders did not act recklessly. Their boldness emerged from careful observation, calculation, and foresight. Before taking action, one must gather information, evaluate options, anticipate outcomes, and weigh risks. This process ensures that decisions are not impulsive, but intentional, driven by reason rather than fear or desire. Confidence comes not from arrogance, but from the certainty that one has considered alternatives, understood the consequences, and prepared for resistance. A mind trained in clarity recognizes that once this threshold of preparedness is reached, hesitation is dangerous and action becomes imperative. Timing is crucial to decisive action. Machiavelli emphasized that even the wisest strategy fails if not executed at the proper moment. Opportunities are fleeting, and delay allows rivals to adapt, circumstances to shift, and advantages to dissipate. The strategist must balance careful preparation with the courage to act, understanding that perfection is rarely attainable and that waiting too long can be fatal. Action, when informed by insight, must be swift, precise, and unambiguous, leaving no room for doubt or misinterpretation. A decisive act establishes control over the situation, asserts dominance, and often preempts resistance before it arises. Another critical aspect is clarity of purpose. Acting decisively requires that intentions be clearly defined and communicated. Machiavelli's rulers ensured that every move served a purpose, that each action advanced strategic goals, and that allies and subordinates understood their roles. Decisive action without clarity is chaotic. It creates confusion, wastes resources, and can backfire. By acting with a clear objective, the strategist aligns resources, shapes perception, and maximizes the impact of every effort. The mind that masters clarity and then pairs it with purposeful execution transforms potential energy into tangible results. Risk management is integral to decisive action. Machiavelli recognized that every move carries uncertainty, yet the strategist does not allow fear to immobilize them. Acting decisively is not reckless impulsivity. It is the calculated willingness to embrace risk once all relevant information has been considered. By anticipating consequences, preparing contingencies, and maintaining flexibility, one converts risk into opportunity. Indecision, by contrast, amplifies danger, allowing external forces to dictate outcomes and leaving the strategist vulnerable to events beyond their control. Action, when informed, converts uncertainty into a tool, enabling one to shape rather than be shaped by circumstances. Finally, decisive action reinforces authority and cultivates momentum. Machiavelli understood that success breeds influence. Those who act with clarity and confidence inspire loyalty, command respect, and deter opposition. Hesitation, in contrast, signals weakness, emboldening rivals and undermining credibility. Once informed, the mind must not linger in deliberation. It must move, strike, and adapt, using knowledge as the foundation for execution. The strategist recognizes that power is not in observation alone, but in the seamless integration of insight and action, where thinking clearly leads naturally to doing boldly, and where every decision, once made, is implemented with precision, purpose, and authority. In the end, power, clarity, and success are never gifts. They are earned through mastery of the mind, discipline over emotion, foresight of consequences, careful scrutiny of others, simplification of chaos, and decisive action. Those who hesitate, who allow passion to guide them, who ignore warning signs, or who delay when opportunity calls, will always be outmaneuvered by those who think clearly and act boldly. To rule your life, influence others, and seize what is within your grasp, you must adopt the mind of a strategist, relentless, observant, and unflinching. Remember, the world rewards those who understand it, anticipate it, and act upon it with precision. Let these principles guide every choice, every move, and every step. For mastery of yourself is the first step to mastery of all that surrounds you.